The roar of hundreds of wedding guests, once a wave of celebration, suddenly crashed into an unnatural, vacuum-sealed silence. The heavy, ornate doors of the Grand Hotel ballroom creaked open, but there was no radiant bride in a white gown, no majestic wedding march. Instead, a piercing shriek of microphone feedback sliced through the air. On the altar, a single drop of cold sweat traced a path down the jaw of the groom, Kang Min-hyuk. And then, shattering the stillness, came a voice booming from the speakers, a voice thick with drunken arrogance. It wasn't a woman's scream, it was the raw, unfiltered mockery of Kang Min-hyuk himself. Our story begins 6 months before this catastrophic moment. For Kang Min-hyuk, every morning started with the silencing of 3 separate smartphone alarms. As sunlight bled through the blackout curtains of his high-end apartment, his hands moved with practiced ease, swapping out SIM cards. That tiny, almost imperceptible click was the sound of him switching personalities. He'd admire his reflection, the perfect fit of his designer suit, and smile with satisfaction. Because in the morning, he was the devoted boyfriend to a corporate heiress, in the afternoon, the brilliant business partner to a successful accountant named Soo-jin, and by night, a savior to a lonely, wealthy widow. Lee Soo-jin was an accountant who lived by a single creed: numbers never lie. In a world of cold, hard facts, Min-hyuk was the first variable she had ever allowed herself not to calculate. He had approached her by praising her intellect, gently dismantling the fortress she had built around her heart her entire life. She was blissfully unaware that behind his charming smile, the predatory eyes of a snake were calculating her net worth and credit score. That afternoon, sitting in the passenger seat of his car, Soo-jin was dreaming of a future that had already been sold to the highest bidder. But even the most perfect performance eventually shows a crack. As Soo-jin reached for her seatbelt, a single, long strand of hair caught her eye, wedged deep in the seat cushion. Her own hair was the color of jet black ink, but this one was a reddish-brown. Min-hyuk casually laughed it off, blaming a valet parking attendant, but the air in the car told a different story. It held the lingering scent of a sweet, cheap vanilla perfume she never wore. In that moment, a tiny, dangerous spark of suspicion was lit in the deepest corner of her heart. The decisive clue arrived without warning. A few days later, while working late, Soo-jin received a voicemail from Min-hyuk. The usual loving words, saying he was tired and going to bed early. But her highly trained ear, accustomed to finding discrepancies in financial ledgers, caught a faint sound in the background. A soft, electronic chime. It wasn't the sound of his apartment's door lock. It was a completely different tone, an unfamiliar melody from a stranger's front door. Soo-jin played the message again, and again, and again, sinking deeper into her cold office chair as the truth began to settle in her bones. On a Friday night, as rain lashed against the city, Soo-jin finally did it. She followed him. His car bypassed the upscale neighborhood where he lived and headed towards a seedy motel district on the outskirts of town. The rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers matched the frantic pounding of her own heart. He parked, and stepped out into the downpour without an umbrella. Then, he opened the passenger door, and pulled a woman with dyed red hair into the shelter of his coat, kissing her deeply. Under the bleeding glare of the car's headlights, the silhouette of their betrayal was perfectly, horribly clear. Any other woman might have thrown open the car door, screaming into the storm. But not Soo-jin. Her knuckles turned white as she gripped the steering wheel, her body trembling with a silent rage. Instead of confronting him, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small voice recorder. Tears streamed down her face, a silent testament to her heartbreak. But her hands were steady, cold, and precise, collecting the evidence she would need not just for a breakup, but for his complete and utter ruin. The time and money he had stolen from her were too great to waste on mere emotion. She wanted more than a simple goodbye. She wanted to watch his world burn. Soo-jin began to dig, relentlessly. She scoured social media tags, old car sale records, and receipts Min-hyuk had carelessly discarded. Assembling the clues like a puzzle, she finally found them, the other victims. In the dim corner of an old cafe, 3 women met. At first, their eyes were filled with suspicion, but the moment they confirmed their common enemy, Min-hyuk, that suspicion transformed into a powerful, unbreakable bond. On the table between them lay not tissues for their tears, but loan agreements, phone recordings, and a meticulously drafted blueprint for his destruction. Their plan was audacious. They would exploit his greatest weakness, his bottomless greed for money. Soo-jin arranged for a third party, an actress posing as a wealthy investor, to approach him. Min-hyuk, arrogant and blind, swallowed the bait whole. He believed he was the puppet master, expertly juggling 3 women. The tragic irony? He was merely dancing on the strings they held, a marionette in a grand, elaborate mousetrap. Dreaming of the life he was about to secure, he rushed headfirst into a whirlwind engagement with his new, wealthy fiancée. On the morning of his wedding, Min-hyuk winked at his reflection. Today, he was certain, was the day he would finally join the ranks of the elite society he so desperately craved. He slipped into a tuxedo paid for with stolen money and settled into the back of a luxury car bound for the ceremony. The city skyline flashing past his window seemed to bow at his feet. He took out his phone and, one by one, deleted the names of the women he had conned. Disposable commodities, he thought, that had served their purpose. The wedding hall was breathtaking. The air was thick with the scent of fresh flowers, and crystal chandeliers dripped light from the ceiling. But there was something strange about the expressions on the guests' faces. They weren't friends or family. They were actors, hired by Soo-jin, and creditors to whom Min-hyuk owed a fortune. Oblivious, he walked confidently down the aisle as the MC announced his entrance. The applause that rained down on him felt like adoration. He had no idea it was the thunderous sound of his own downfall approaching. It was the moment the MC called for the bride's entrance. But instead of a grand orchestra, a crackling static hissed from the speakers. Then, the giant screen behind the altar began to lower. Min-hyuk turned, confused. A surprise event, he wondered for a fleeting, foolish second. But what appeared on the screen was not a loving video message from his bride. It was shaky, hidden camera footage of himself, drunk and swaggering. "Oh, those women? They're just idiots," his voice boomed through the hall. He was laughing, bragging to his friends as if his crimes were trophies. "Whisper I love you a few times, and they'll hand over their bank account passwords. It's that easy." He named them all: Soo-jin, the widow, the woman with red hair, describing in graphic detail how he had handled each of them. The wedding hall erupted into chaos. Guests gasped in horror, and the flashes from hidden cameras, planted by bloggers and journalists the women had invited, began to fire like a firing squad, executing his reputation in real time. Min-hyuk frantically screamed at the MC to shut off the video, but his microphone was dead. He tried to flee the altar, but just then, the main doors of the hall swung open to reveal uniformed police officers. Fraud, embezzlement, and deception for financial gain. As a detective presented him with a warrant for his arrest, Min-hyuk's legs gave out from under him. Cold, silver handcuffs were snapped onto the wrists of his proud, designer suit. The metallic click echoed through the hall, a sound far more final and brutal than any wedding bell. As the sound of Min-hyuk's desperate screams faded down the hallway, a strange quiet fell over the room. The guests had all filed out, leaving an empty, cavernous hall. Into the space, Soo-jin walked slowly. She bent down and picked up the fake diamond ring he had planned to give his bride, now lying abandoned on the stage. It glittered under the spotlight, just like his life, a dazzling, empty fraud. With a blank expression, she let it drop to the floor. The clear, lonely tink echoed through the vast, empty space. It wasn't just the closing bell on a con man's career. It was the sound of freedom for the women he tried to break. Sujin turned and walked out of the hall without a backward glance. The air outside was crisp and cold, but the crushing weight she had carried for 6 months was gone, washed away completely. She knew that while prison awaited him, the public execution of his character, broadcast for the world to see, was the most perfect and cruel punishment he could ever receive. In a solitary confinement cell, Min-hyuk sat huddled under the pale moonlight filtering through a tiny, barred window. There were no more SIM cards to swap, no more colognes to wear. Here, he was forced to face his true self. The man in the reflection was not a charming Casanova, but a pathetic parasite who fed on the hearts of others. He clawed at the walls and screamed, but there was no one left in the world to hear him. A castle built on a foundation of lies will always, eventually, crumble into sand. Kang Min-hyuk played the part of a lover, but his final curtain call was behind the cold, steel bars of reality. The empty wedding hall, prepared by the 3 brides he scorned, became the stage for his own spectacular funeral. It's a chilling reminder that while the truth may hide in silence, it always finds a way to scream at the most decisive moment. And that is where our story ends for tonight. But let me ask you this. Is there anyone in your life who seems just a little too perfect? Sometimes, it pays to listen not to the dazzling promises you can see, but to the tiny, hairline cracks you can barely hear. Because in this world, there is no such thing as a perfect secret. Until next time, this has been True Story Theater. We hope your night is peaceful, and above all, we hope it is honest.